Do you find it hard for your business to get the press that it needs and really be able to get that brand awareness that you are craving? If so, you're going to want to stick around for this episode because we have a special guest who we're going to bring in to talk about PR. So stay tuned. Can't say I never tried to warn you, and I'm just trying to tell you. Hello and welcome to the Live Advantage Show. I'm your host, Ed Troxel from edtroxel.com, where I help make video marketing simple for busy online professionals like yourself. And in today's episode, I am excited to have a special guest who we'll bring on here in just a moment to talk about PR and how it can help you with your business. But before we do that, let me just mention who is sponsoring this episode. It is the Real Estate Agents Go Live program. That's right. Real Estate Agents Go Live is a program that allows agents to step up their video marketing efforts through live streaming video and help them get more listings. You can learn more about them at realestateagentsgolive.com, and all of the links are going to be in the show notes, both for our sponsor as well as for our guest. And if you need anything, of course, you can always reach out to me as well. Now, let's go ahead and bring on our special guest today to talk about PR.
Hi.
Oh, welcome, Amanda. How are you?
Good.
Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience so that way we get to know who you are, and then we'll dive into the conversation today.
Sure. I'm Amanda Green. I'm an account executive with Orca Communications. We are a small PR firm that specializes in working with inventors and entrepreneurs.
Oh, I love it. And we actually met through LinkedIn, which I've been telling everyone, you know, I'm a Facebooker, of course, and that's really where my community is. But I've been spending a lot more time on LinkedIn, which has been so rewarding, and being able to meet so many amazing people just like yourself. And you actually took the time to jump on a social call, I call them, and spend a few minutes with me so that way we get to know each other a little bit more than just the profile on LinkedIn. And that was really, really informative. And what I loved about it was you have a unique background, and so does your team. So can you kind of talk about that before we dive into more of the PR stuff here?
Sure. So my background, I was a TV producer for a dozen years before I made the switch into PR. And at Orca Communications, we're kind of unique in the PR world because most of our team has that similar background. Our team's made up of former producers, former reporters, former writers, former editors. So we've all been on the other side of the media machine. And so we know firsthand, you know, how to pitch to the press, how to communicate with them and speak their language, and what works and what doesn't work. Because, you know, we always say that we've trashed more press releases than we've read, because it's true. You know, journalists are getting, depending on where they work, easily 1,000 emails a week of people pitching stories to them. So, you know, it's about standing out and knowing how to contact them.
Standing out and knowing how to contact them. That is huge. And so that's a perfect segue into, so how do we get started with that? Because PR is all out there and everyone talks about it, but how do we really get started?
So you need to be in a certain place in your business to really be successful with that. Really what we do is we put our journalist thinking caps on, and we think like the way that the journalists do and the way we did when we were on the other side of it. And that's really thinking about what kind of stories you can tell. So, you want to look at your business and say, what's the hook going to be? Why is a journalist going to want to cover this? Because oftentimes the product itself or your service itself isn't enough. So, think about maybe it's your founder's story. Maybe it's some company initiative. Maybe it's, your mission as a company, or it's your expertise. And it's really finding what that interesting angle is and pitching that to the press, and giving them a story that they're going to want to use, or a piece of expertise that fits with what they're doing.
Yes. And you bring up a keyword, pitch. And so when somebody is thinking about their pitch, any tips around what they should be thinking about, maybe putting in there, or maybe a resource that they should be typing into Google or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I'd say is, one, know who you're pitching to. And, if you have to do a cold pitch because you don't have those media contacts yourself, then you really have to know what it is that, know what kind of stories they tell and how they like to be pitched and all of that. At Orca, we call ourselves an anti-press release PR firm, which, we do press releases. Press releases do serve a purpose. They're great for putting company news on the record. But when it comes to getting that sort of editorial press coverage that most of our clients come to us wanting, the best way to do that is through story pitching. And just think of it as a conversation starter. That's what we do. And, it's a way to open the door between the brand and the editor or whoever it is that you're pitching to in order to get them interested in covering whatever story it is that you're giving them.
Yes. And I love that too. You mentioned how, the press releases. Now, a lot of people probably think that the first thing they should be doing is creating a press release. And how would you approach that? Because I know that we had that conversation too about the difference between press releases and kind of what you guys do now.
Yeah. Press releases, I don't want to say like they don't work. They do work it depends on what your goal is. If you're announcing a new product or something like that, where in itself is interesting, then maybe it makes sense to do a press release to again, put company news on the record. And just to explain the difference between the two, a press release is usually longer. It's usually 1 or 2 pages. To the press, it generally comes across, unless you genuinely have something that's truly newsworthy, it's probably going to come across as maybe a little bit self-serving or a bit commercially, so it's what's the point of it? And so instead of that, we focus on a story pitch, it's exactly that. It's a couple of lines, a couple of sentences of here's the story that you need to know, and this is why you need to know it. And so that's really what we're giving to the press there.
Yes, here's the story, and here's why you need to know about it.
Yeah,
that is key. Short, simple, and to the point, because
absolutely,
we know that we don't have time, and these reporters don't have any time.
No, the reality is that newsrooms are shrinking. There's, layoffs everywhere. They're working with a lot more freelance writers than they used to. And actual, like if you're looking at, a big national newspaper, for example, the actual number of staff that's working inside the building or even remotely, but, that's actually staff for the newspaper is dwindling. So you have fewer people who are working harder. I always say, like, there's a reason I left the industry and why I'm not working in news anymore. And that's really just because it's stressful and there's a lot to do and not a lot of time. So you need to think of that and really be mindful of the journalists of their time whenever you're reaching out to them. And, I would have PR people call me when I was a TV producer. They would call me 5 minutes before I'd go live on TV. I'd be 5 minutes away from, sitting in the control room and going live and having, 10 different reporters that I need to go to. And they'd call me and they'd say, I have to tell you about this author who just did, and I'd be like, I don't care. I'm about to go live on TV. So it's really knowing when to reach out to them and knowing what their editorial timeline looks like, understanding what kind of pressures they're up against, what they need in their story pitches and all of that. If you're reaching out to a writer or a reporter, it's what do they need to give to their editor or their producer, and being able to give them that.
Yes, it's really being in tuned to what the other person needs. And it's that relationship building and knowing how that conversation can go. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were speaking about the press release versus like a pitch, it almost sounds like a press release is more all about me and how awesome I am versus a pitch could be about how awesome this would be for you and how I'm helping serve you by providing everything like on a silver platter for you.
Yeah, that's one good way to explain it. Another way to think of a press release is that it's announcing something. If you're doing a press release, it's because you have some kind of news to share that you want to make on the record. And so that would be the reason for doing that. But if it's something that's just seasonal, like Father's Day is coming up, you don't want to say, just that, hey, we've got deals for Father's Day. That's not really a good press release that's going to get any kind of pickup. So, for that, you do something more like a pitch.
Okay, got it. Perfect.
Yeah.
And what's the difference between PR and advertising, or are they the same?
Well, the world is starting to blend between PR and advertising, where the biggest difference is PR, we're talking about earned media. You're not paying for the placements. So the positive of that is that you're ending up with authentic reviews, editorial press coverage, and it comes across that way to the audience. I mean, everybody knows when they're being sold to these days. And so if you're taking out an advertisement, people know what, the company paid for that advertisement. And even if you're doing social media and you're working with influencers or something like that, a lot of times they know, everybody knows what a sponsored post is and that the company, paid for that. So the benefit of PR is that we're working on earned media. We're generating brand awareness. It's about getting more eyes on your product or your service, on your brand, on your company, and getting that more authenticity and credibility for your company.
I love that. And that is an amazing tool or amazing service to offer to help them as well.
Yeah,
and,
go ahead. There's definitely some pros and cons, though, whenever you're talking about the difference between the two. Whenever you take out an advertisement, whether it's, a sponsored online post or it's a more traditional advertisement in, a newsletter or something like that, you do have full control usually over the editorial. So you have control over how many words it is and what the text looks like and how many graphics are in it and what that looks like. When you're doing PR, you do lose that control, but that's where the authenticity comes in. And that's where building up that brand credibility comes in, is through that type of natural reviews and natural product reviews or service reviews, or that natural expertise that you're giving to somebody comes in. So that's the real benefit of PR, is while you lose that control over exactly what it's going to look like and when it's going to print and where it's going to print, you get that credibility. And so that's really what it's for, is for companies that are looking to increase not just brand awareness, but also build themselves up.
Yes. And I love that you mentioned reviews, because reviews is, I feel like for a lot of business owners that it's a touchy subject, because we want reviews because that is public and everyone can see that. But also one of those hesitations from some business owners, because they don't want to get a bad review.
Right.
But it's so important to have reviews available, because again, it builds up that awareness and it gives your brand that credibility and helps you with it. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. And definitely that's exactly what it does, is it builds up your brand awareness, your credibility. Most reviews that we run across for our clients, they're positive reviews. In working with small businesses primarily, the press they're not out to bash some small business owner. That's not what they're doing. And it's, is it really worth their time to publish a bad review? Most of the time, in our experience, what we come across is if a journalist doesn't like a product or they disagree with a company, we might get that kind of feedback of, I don't want to cover this because, or they'll just, not respond. And so that's fine too, and if they do respond and they let us know that, if it was a product that was shipped to them and the product fell apart, the sample didn't work or something, then maybe we have an opportunity to fix it. But if it's the type of thing where they go, this just doesn't work with our publication, then that's fine too. They're not, like I said, they're not out to bash small businesses. So it's unlikely that you'll get bad reviews. I mean, they can happen and they do happen, but they're few and far between.
Yes, exactly. And it's always good to have that door of communication open, because it's so important to be able to communicate like what's happening and what's going on, and seeing how you can work together to be able to make it move forward for that.
Right. I mean, the companies that end up getting negative reviews they're huge companies, like if you're not Google or Apple or, Samsung or, a company that everybody knows, where that's what, I mean, there are some editors out there who just want to, say this was not a good product. Maybe they didn't like the new iPhone or whatever, but they're not going to, most of the time, they're not going to do that for some little small company that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's some of the most common mistakes that you're seeing when companies hire a PR firm? Because, we've talked about what we can kind of do. And for some, they may get their feet wet with looking up pitch templates and trying to think a little bit more about PR. We've planted the seed, but what should they really be considering when they're thinking about hiring a PR firm like yours?
Right. Definitely look at the other clients that the firm has to know who have they represented previously. And if you're looking at somebody who's working like our firm, where we work with a lot of small businesses, is, just looking at the space that they're in. At Orca, we have different publicists who have different specialties. So we work with everything from food brands to baby brands to entrepreneurs that are more, in the business world, to consumer tech. I mean, we have different publicists who have different specialties. We're a team of about 25. So whenever you're looking at a firm, is make sure that they can work within, and they have worked within the industry that you are in. And then secondly, what I'd say to look out for is, any great PR firm should have good contacts with the media, but it's more in their approach and looking at actual results. What are they getting on a weekly, on a monthly basis? What kind of national press coverage have they had? What does that coverage look like for each individual client that they've worked with? If it's, is it within the demographic that client wants to see? So just because I share results with one brand, it might not necessarily be exactly what your brand is looking at, but you can look and see how did it reach that company's goals. So that's one thing. That's another thing that I'd say to look at. And then thirdly is make sure that you're ready for PR. There's a lot of PR firms that are out there and they'll just go, oh yeah, we'll take your money. But the reality is that you really need to be there's a sweet spot for doing it, for sure. If you have a physical product, you want to make sure that you have samples available, that you have high resolution images that you can give to editors, that you have your branding put together, that, your website looks good. If you have a physical product, that the packaging and the manufacturing and things like that are all of the, problems that might come up have been worked out already. So that, whenever we give this to the press, if they have any kind of questions, hopefully those will answer themselves and they'll see your company in a really positive light. If you're offering a service, similarly, make sure that your credentials match what it is that you're selling. And, if you're in real estate, for example, you want to make sure that you're actually, licensed to be able to practice, or, if you're a doctor, same thing. Or if you have, if you're offering yourself up as a wellness expert, what are those credentials that make you a wellness expert, or whatever it is? So those are really the key things, is to make sure that that you've got all your ducks in a row and that you're really solid on what your company is, what you do, what you have, what you sell, all of that, before you go and decide to do PR.
That is such great advice. I hope everyone listening will re-listen to that specifically, because again, getting the PR is great, but you have to be ready for it. And you brought up also a keyword, website, which is so important for business owners, because there's many that think having a social profile on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever is enough. And it's part of the plan, but it's not the plan. We still need that website.
The press is going to look you up. So when they look you up, you have to be able to present yourself to them in a way that even if you're a small company, you look like a big dog, and that's one of the great things for a lot of our clients, is that we're able to get these small companies big national press coverage next to these big national brands like Google or something like that. And they're in the same product roundup, or, their expertise is shared alongside, experts from big national companies. So that's really what you need to have is, how you present yourself online is think about how the press is going to look at that, and where are they going to send people. Somebody who might see, you know, if you're featured on a TV show, for instance, and somebody wants to look you up, where are they going to go to look you up? Most people are going to go looking for your website. And if they don't find it and all they see is a Facebook page, they might go, oh, well, maybe they're not as big as they say they are, or something like that. You know, they don't need to know that it's one or two people running the whole show.
Yes. Oh, I love that you bring that up. The first example that came to mind was when I see somebody on Shark Tank, I immediately, if I can't remember their website or they didn't give it, I immediately go to Google. Of course, I'll see there was a clip or something from Shark Tank, but I find their website and go check out their website almost instantly. I don't even hit their social. It's always their website. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what we do, is we just Google whatever it is that we're looking for. Yeah. And so the website's really important there. And then, you know, one of the benefits of PR too, when we're talking about increasing your presence online, is if you get that sort of national recognition. You know, if say it's a feature where they take a quote from you on Forbes or something like that, then that's going to come up in the Google search too. If somebody searches for your company, they'll see, oh, well, they were on Forbes, they were mentioned in the New York Times, or they were mentioned on the Today Show or whatever. And so that's definitely a big positive win for PR too.
Oh, I love it. Now, before we end this episode, let me ask, how do we tell if we need a PR firm? Because we've gotten all this great info, and I think we kind of just answered that, but I just want to make sure, you know, we've thought about, now we planted the seed about PR, we're getting our ducks in a row, and now I'm not sure, can I just do this on my own, or should I be hiring a firm like yours?
Yeah. So if you need a PR firm, so you want to increase your brand awareness, you know, you want more eyes on the product or the service, you want to announce something might be a good reason, or you just want to increase your credibility or your authority, then those are good reasons to be looking at PR. Now, should you do it yourself or should you hire a firm? One thing to know is that PR is more of a marathon than a sprint. And it's a lot of back and forth. So if you are a really busy entrepreneur, which I know every single one is, but if you don't have the expertise or the comfort level or the time to really put in and research editors and writers and things like that you might want to pitch to, then that's a good reason to hire a firm, because it is very time consuming. It's a lot of back and forth conversations. You know, it's not, most of the time the press doesn't just pick up on the very first time we introduce you to them. You know, you have to go back and forth. And so if they weren't interested in you for Father's Day, are they interested in you for the 4th of July or for Memorial Day or for, you know, whatever different seasons or reasons you're reaching out to them? You know, it's going back and forth and reminding them constantly about your company and about your brand. So if you don't have the time to do that, then that's a good reason to go to a PR firm and to work with somebody who does have great press connections and who speaks the press's language. So even if it's, if you're hoping to get into an outlet like a trade publication or something like that, that is maybe not quite so mainstream, do they know how to get to that editor? If it is a cold outreach, you know, is it via email? Is it via text message? Is it social media? Like, how does that individual editor want to be pitched? What time do you pitch them? What kind of timeline are they working on? There's many publications that are working 6 to 12 months in advance. So, you know, going to a firm that knows that about each publication and how to figure that out is that's the real benefit there.
Yeah, I will say when we talked before this episode, instantly that's what clicked. Was you guys know, obviously you're the experts, you know that whole lineup of events, and it just makes it so much easier for someone to just say, okay, I'm ready, let's work together, and then boom, you guys can take over that whole plate of contacts and messaging and all of that. And I loved how you also mentioned that your team is so unique because you have someone in all of these different specialty areas, which for me feels so comfortable being able to walk into a room and say, okay, here's what I got. And you can instantly be, yes, this, we can cover this, and this is the person to talk to. Like, it just feels so nice to have everything there.
Yeah, and that's what we try to do for our clients. And the advice that I think a lot of entrepreneur and small business owners receive is, to know your strengths and know when to outsource and what do you outsource and what do you do yourselves, especially when you're running a tight ship and you're on a budget. And so PR is one of those things that, yeah, it's pretty expensive, but it really can free up a lot of time and it can do a lot for your brand. One of the things that our firm does is we also offer some digital marketing services as well. So one of the things that we can do is help you leverage that PR coverage, because you can't just say, oh, I was featured in Forbes and just expect the sales to start rolling in. It's what you do with it. And so we're able to help you with that as well. And, it's just a lot of taking stuff off your plate and just knowing your strengths. And, if you feel like this isn't something that you're comfortable doing, then that's a good reason to go to a firm. And might I recommend Orca Communications?
Yes, I second that. I definitely second that. I mean, just from the conversations that we've had both here and prior, it just, you make it so easy and simple and just feel like a weight has been lifted off of our shoulders just from talking about it and getting a better understanding of how PR works and what we can do to prepare ourselves for it. So, because there's a lot of, like you mentioned, you can get an article in Forbes and it's like, woohoo, great. But then what? Like, what do you do with that? And having someone or a team behind you that knows already before you even get that article what's going to happen is huge. It's all about knowing that before, during, and after stages of the process.
Yep, that's it.
Well, anything else that you want to share before I let you go?
No, I think if anybody has any questions, if they want to, I try to be easy to talk to. You can always email me, amanda.green@orcapr.com, or just look us up at orcacommunications.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm friends with Ed on there, so we can connect and I'll chat with you there too.
Yes, I appreciate that. And I do have links in the show notes for everyone. So be sure to connect with Amanda because, as you can tell, she's amazing. And having a conversation with her is just so good. It's so good. So we appreciate you being here with us today, Amanda. And I appreciate all of you tuning into this episode. And if you need anything, you know where to reach me, edtroxel.com. There's a little chat on there and you can start a chat anytime. And until next time, we will see you guys later. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for having me.